the masterful singer-songwriter Steve Earle in one of my favorites of his intones. I woke up this morning and none of the news was good. Death machines were rumbling across the ground where Jesus stood. And the man on my TV told me that it had always been that way, and there was nothing anyone could do or say. He admits, and I almost listened to him, and I almost lost my mind, and I regained my senses again, looked into my heart to find, and here it is that Steve Earle professes his faith. I believe that one fine day all the children of Abraham will lay down their swords forever in Jerusalem. Good morning. My name is Jay Leach. I'm one of this community's ministers, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Today, ambitiously, especially for an early June Sunday morning, we turn our attention to the conflict about which Steve Earle sings. The dispute between Israel and Palestine, a conflict with a long history and a recent tragic manifestation. The vehemence and persistence of this conflict make most of us skeptical when Steve Earle sings, I believe there'll come a day when the lion and the lamb will lie down in peace together in Jerusalem. Our liberating faith is a religion of the here and now. We commit through our principles to affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. As such, reflecting on things like this conflict isn't for us simply a political discussion. It is at the very heart of our religion. I'm glad you've joined this morning, or whenever you're viewing this virtual service. If you're a guest, someone just discovering us perhaps, I urge you to explore our website and to reach out for a conversation. You can contact our membership coordinator, Kelly Green, if you'd like to talk with her or with one of us who are ministers here. Whether member or guest, I invite you as we encounter the first of our compelling musical experiences today to go to our public Facebook page and share greetings with one another there. Welcome.
طلعت عحالي في المراية شفت بنت ما بتشبهني في النفسية والحياة. طلعت علي البنت هاي من فوق لتحت حكت شوف الاختلاف أنا أحلامك حياتك اللي فيها كل شي بتتمنيه فيها عيونك الحلوات بتحب تشوف تعالي جربي خلي راسك مرتاح بعيد عن الهموم غمضت عيوني رجعت للظلم العايش فيه الواقع اللي مربطني في الحركة والتفكير يا ريت لو كانت حياتي المسجونة في المراي ما بتردد بكسرها وبتروح كلها شظايا بس كسرت فيها نور في المراي
لا صدى ولا صوت طلعنا الأمل من جوا الموت والشمس معنا بتغني بتنام لا تقوم ع امل انه في بكره بس بتقوم لا تكتشف انه دايما نفس الفكره برجع يومك هو اللي من سنين كل الايام بتمشي ع نفس الروتين حواجز دون عبره بدك تغير بس افكار المجتمع بتجتمع لحتى تعرف كيف تجمعك بتخاف تحكي الصح بس ينسمع شخص بالك ودود بس مش معك بينظموا افكارك داخل حدود مش إلك؟ ليش ما يكون عندك حرية اختيار؟ ليش دايما خايفة ومتخبية في الدار؟ مسجونة بهالبلاد بدك مخرج طوارئ. انتي مجرد بنت، لا انتي ساحر ولا مارد. لا صدى ولا صوت، طلعنا الأمل من جوا الموت، والشمس معنا بتغني. نفسي أفكر بلا حدود تمنعني تمحيني من واقع وهمي، متمحور مسجون في محيط مجنون. نفسي أمشي بدون حاجز يوقفني، أو كلمات تقطع لي أفكاري، أعبر باب المسدود ياخدني على عالم تاني، يعيشني في حلم أو خيال تاني. نفسي أفكر بلا حدود، نفسي محبوس، هدوء سكوت، أشعة شمس على شعري الأسود في نظاري، متربص بحاول يمنعني من الوجود. أحلامي تبعثرت اتكسرت، صرت أجمع أجزاء اللي تفرقت، أقدر أصل لهدف المطلوب عشان أهرب من المجتمع والمجهول. نفسي أفكر بلا حدود ولا صوت، طلعنا الأمل من جوا الموت، والشمس معنا بتغني.
These days, I find myself in these days, unique thoughts set ablaze, and despite our flaws, we seem to find ourselves controlled by society. Individuality is met with brutality. Today's mentality, what a catastrophe, materialistic fools, lost in the world of temporary happiness and growing selfishness. All the loneliness is 2018, and look at me, still protesting, free Palestine, still screaming, Black Lives Matter, and people say, stop the yatter. Fragile masculinity, the dragging women down for their affinity in a world full of change. How do some things never change?
In harmony with many of the world's religions, light is for us a symbol. We begin our services each week with the kindling of the flame of our chalice, sacred symbol of our liberating faith. In its light, may we see truth more clearly. By its beacon, may we journey with hope through troubling days of conflict, near and far. Taha Muhammad Ali is a highly acclaimed Palestinian poet. In his compelling collection, So What? New and Selected Poems 1971 2005, Taha Muhammad Ali includes a poem he entitles The Bell at 40, The Destruction of a Village. The past dozes beside me, as the ringing does beneath its grandfather bell, and the bitterness follows me, as the chicks trail after their mother hen. And the horizon, that eyelid tightly shut over the sands and blood, what did it leave you? And what hope does it hold? I was awakened from a deep jet-lagged slumber on an early January morning in 1981 by the plaintive sound of the Muslim call to prayer. From atop a nearby minaret, the adhan sounded, Allah Akbar, the sacred summoning of the Islamic faithful to the pre-dawn portion of their 5 times daily prayers. It was my first morning in Jerusalem, at the beginning of weeks in Israel and then Greece as a student on a foreign study program. Before that first day ended, my head would be spinning with the kaleidoscopic, cacophonous collision of sights and sounds unlike any I've ever experienced. There in that city, claimed as an especially sacred site by 3 of the world's religions, I would learn firsthand how complex such claims and those making them were. The hundreds of thousands of Muslims who came together to pray at one of Jerusalem's dozens of mosques were not a monolith. From many different nations and ethnicities, predominantly Sunni, but also Shias, Sufis, and others. The ultra-Orthodox Jews sequestered in Maya Sharim bore no resemblance at all to the fashionable Jewish youth strolling Hillel Street, and neither were remotely like the white-robed Kassim, Ethiopian rabbis from the Beta Israel community. And those Franciscan monks leading the Via Dolorosa procession seemed quite different from the Orthodox priests tending the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. If prostrate Muslims at the ornate Al-Aqsa Mosque fervent Jews davening at the western wall below, and pious Christian tourists on stone benches at the garden tomb were all praying to the same God, then this must entail some immense sense of the sacred, encompassing many different threads, each a strand in a stunning, if also confusing, tapestry. And that's an important reminder, a starting place for today's reflection. Religion is complex, far too complex to be summarized in some single, simple statement that could account for all that I experienced in Jerusalem. And not just that. Each religion is complex in and of itself, similarly incapable of being defined or described simply in some way that would include all of its adherents. So what is the role of religion in the long-standing conflict between Israel and Palestine? Jews and Muslims and Christians have stoked the flames of enmity and have led the struggle for justice and peace, have translated difference into dissension, and have arrived at courageously shared commitments by widely varying pathways. There's no question that religion has served to motivate some of the most indefensible, even despicable actions in this decades-long dispute. Religion has used its power to do harm, and religion has been used by those in power to do harm. And in Israel, in Palestine, here in the U.S., and around the world, perhaps the most vigorous calls for mutual respect, just reparation, and peaceful coexistence are coming from those motivated by their deep religious commitments. Anyone interested in honest reflection on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict must forego all easy conclusions, especially the assumption that the role of religion in this conflict is something simple or straightforward.
كنت رايح أغني دقيت باللي ماله غنى عني كل باله يحرق لي دمي بس لما عرف إني بغني الشرطي ما تركني ولا حل عني الشرطي ما تركني ولا حل عني قلت له شو بفهمك بفهمني قلت له شو بفهمك بفهمني شرطوا فرض عليني أغني لحتى يحل عني
I sing for the stones beneath my feet. I sing for the child that smiled in the street. I sing delight in the load of the wind
פתוחים, ראשי מסתחרר, מסרב להחלים, אין לי כוח להכיל את כבד השנים, הכל מסתחרר בלילות וימים, עכשיו אאלץ לדחוק בגפיי, לגשר בליבי ראשי וידיי, זה הרגע לקום לחטא פצעים, לחלוק הכאב, להחליט להשלים. I sing for the stones beneath my feet, I sing for the child that smiled in the street, I sing the light and the load of the wind, I sing to appease the demons within. I don't need to sing to prove my existence, I don't need to sing to fight your indifference, I sing for the lessons the world hasn't learned, I sing for my soul as she watches it burn, I sing as the trees grow branches above, and I don't need a reason to love. Sometimes I fear that I won't make a change, that my voice won't be heard because I will be afraid. We need to rise up and sing for our pain, cause I'm feeling lost, can I be shown the way?
صوتي عم بوجع من كثر ما ناديت، تعبت من كثر ما غنيت وحكيت، مش عم اشوف تغيير ولا اي اشي صغير، ما بعني بهالحكي رح بستسلم وبطير، اصحابي معاي عالطريق عم بنقاتل مع بعض، بنكمل الصراع وبنعبر لكل حدا صغير، عم بقول له لا تسافر، ضلك احلم بلدك فيها خير.
I
غامز
sing for the stones beneath my feet, I sing for the child that smiled in the street, I sing the light and the load of the wind, I sing to appease the demons within. I don't need to sing to prove my existence, I don't need to sing to fight your indifference, I sing for the lessons the world hasn't learned, I sing for my soul as she watches it burn, I sing as the trees grow branches above, and I don't need a reason to love. Show me the way, show me the way, show me the way, show me the reason to don't, show me the way, don't, show me the reason to love.
The conflict is complex. And as we just witnessed again last month, both the Israelis and the Palestinians have engaged in utterly indefensible atrocities. But being aware that this is complex must not be used as an excuse to ignore it, or perhaps worse, to be complicit in misrepresenting certain realities and indulging in false equivalencies. Just as in our own national history, there's a carefully crafted narrative based less in truth than in ideology. We do well to educate ourselves about this situation. For starters, those Zionist colonizers who first came to the region did not find an empty land any more than the English colonizers found an unoccupied territory here. Palestine was part of a rich and fertile Mediterranean world already undergoing a process of modernization and nationalization. It was not a barren desert, but a place where Palestinians were living and had been living for centuries. The Zionist effort to establish the state of Israel was a process that, in many ways, would prove just as disastrous for the native people living there as for the indigenous population here. David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, described Palestinian workers and farmers as an infested hotbed of pain. Many Jewish settlers referred to the Palestinians as strangers and aliens and claimed that they had nothing in common with the people who were already living there. Though there are early records of welcome from some Palestinians and of harmony between these new settlers and those who were already at home. Again, as was the case with the indigenous population here, there would be a high price to pay for such hospitality. Like other colonizers before them, in time, many of those early Jewish settlers began to engage in an intentional dehumanization of the Palestinians. As often happens, dehumanization eventually justified a two-tiered system in which a sense of superiority, made all the more dangerous by claims of divine sanction, fostered deep and ongoing systemic injustice and inequity. That's the clear conclusion of Human Rights Watch. Israeli authorities, it declares, methodically privilege Jewish Israelis and discriminate against Palestinians. Laws, policies, and statements they continue by leading Israeli officials make plain that the objective of maintaining Jewish Israeli control over demographics, political power, and land has long guided government policy. In pursuit of this goal, authorities have dispossessed, confined, forcibly separated, and subjugated Palestinians by virtue of their identity to varying degrees of intensity. In certain areas, says this report, these deprivations are so severe that they amount to crimes against humanity of apartheid and persecution. This is why Angela Davis and many other activists identify with the Palestinian struggle, not as an expression of anti-Semitic hatred, but as an act of solidarity with the oppressed. Likening it to the international struggle to end apartheid in South Africa, Davis asserts the tendency has been to consider Palestine a separate and unfortunately too often marginal issue. This is, she continues, this is precisely the moment to encourage everyone who believes in equality and justice to join the call for a free Palestine. We do not need to justify all of the actions of the Palestinians in order to join in solidarity with their struggle. Nor do we need to ignore the dangerous specter of those who are anti-Semitic to understand that the often oppressed have become oppressors. As the Jewish organization, If Not Now, asserts, we acknowledge the existence of anti-Jewish oppression in the world and in ourselves. But they are clear that this does not justify the continued oppression of the Palestinians. The occupation, they declare, is a system of violence and separation by which Israel denies Palestinians freedom and dignity by depriving them of civil, political, and economic rights. The occupation is a daily nightmare for those who live it and is a moral disaster for those who support it and administrate it. We who profess our commitment to a world of peace and justice do well to heed their declaration as we consider this troubling conflict. Aware of the complexity of this conflict, I reached out to two collegial friends here in Charlotte to ask if they might contribute reflections to our service. I'm grateful and honored that both will now be sharing their thoughts with us. First, Rabbi Asher Knight, who is Senior Rabbi of Temple Beth El, and then Imam John Ederer, who is the Imam of the Muslim Community Center of Charlotte, each offering their perspective on the long-standing conflict between Israel and Palestine.
Good morning. I want to thank you for the invitation to speak. My rabbinic mentor, Rabbi David Stern, once taught me that the most important phrase in the Jewish tradition is found in the book of Exodus after Moses ascended Mount Sinai to receive the commandments. And God said to Moses, Lech Red. Lech means get going. Red means go down. Lech Red, go down the mountain. The message to Moses was clear: go down the mountain with the teachings of the commandments, because this covenant of ours, this tradition, which we call Judaism, is meant to live in the world and not just up on Mount Sinai. God told Moses to carry the ideas and ideals and teachings into the path of everyday life. God tells Moses to go down the mountain precisely because we as humans are entrusted to apply the values of the 5 books of Moses to the ways in which we live and work in society, and the society that we create, and the polity, the public arena of life. Judaism isn't supposed to be partisan. It doesn't care which political party people are affiliated with, or even if you're affiliated with one at all. But the ancient rabbis were actually quite comfortable, often even much more comfortable than we are, reading the texts of our tradition through a political frame. And one of the most famous examples of the political reading comes in the rabbinic interpretation of the text. It's actually above the Ark at Temple Beth El here in Charlotte. And it comes from the story of Jacob's famous dream with the ladder reaching up to the heavens, with the angels ascending and descending upon it. And it's a story that serves as the basis of our congregation's name, Temple Beth El. The rabbis they share an interpretation that the angels were actually representations of empires of the world. And the angels on the ladder would rise and fall, just like the Babylonians and the Greeks and the Romans rose and fell as societies, ascending and descending. And in this radical rereading of the biblical text, God says to Jacob, now you should ascend the ladder. But Jacob, afraid to ascend the ladder of power and sovereignty, representing, the Jewish people, chose not to climb up the ladder of national sovereignty and instead lived in the diaspora, subjects to the rise and the fall of other nations. But we come to 1948 and the founding of the State of Israel. And for the first time in 2,000 years, Jewish sovereignty, where many other states had been founded on Christian or Muslim ideals and ideas, we have the very first and the only Jewish state. And Jewish leaders chose to take hold of the rungs of the ladder of history with strength and spirit and incredible heart. And in ascending that ladder, they founded the State of Israel, and the risks of power and the responsibility of that power, of how to use power justly, of how to use power for the ethical necessities of protecting and defending their own people, and the power that is also required to act with restraint as much as possible, even towards those who fight against Israel's right to exist. Some in the political left these days argue that Israel can do no right and that Israel should not exist as a state. They argue that Israel should not have never climbed up the ladder, that we should never have had a state. But staying off the ladder of power is easier said until you realize that really suffering is not a moral achievement, that death is not a moral achievement. Easier until you realize that being decimated by genocide is not a victory either by existentially or ethically. And it's also true that grabbing onto the ladder of sovereignty means that Israel must grapple with the just use of its own power. So we come to the excruciating realities of the last 2 weeks in Israel and in Gaza, and the Israeli government has a moral obligation to defend her citizens, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and Baha'i, who were in harm's way of missiles. But the challenge of grasping onto the ladder of history is that Israel must also use its power justly. Being pro-Israel does not mean that we have to be anti-Palestinian, just as much as being for the ethical treatment of Palestinians and wanting a Palestinian state does not make someone anti-Israel. Children do not ask to be born into Gaza. Innocent families do not choose to stay in Gaza. The situation in Gaza is truly untenable. And many in our community and in Israel are rightly and profoundly concerned about Israeli power, the death of innocent children and families, and the good people in Gaza. There are many Israelis who are profoundly uncomfortable with what's happening and are working for change. Israel is not a monolithic society. As an American, I can honestly say that there have been times when I have been profoundly uncomfortable with what's happening in the United States, even though I would argue that the United States also has a right to exist. Unfortunately, I fear that this recent situation has helped extremists in both Israeli society and also in Hamas. And the outcomes of this actions bolster Hamas and the very elements in Israel that are the most hard right-leaning groups, arguing for Israel's safety while also showing concern to Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, or Jerusalem is somehow being seen as deceptive or disloyal, either to the Israel can do no wrong crowd or to the Israel can do no right crowd. And this is bad because we can have a nuanced approach. Israel has a legitimate right to exist, and Palestinian lives matter. The challenge is that when we live in a society that pushes extreme positions on the left and on the right to try and hold nuances, to be steeped in love and affection for people and history, to be able to argue the case for Jewish self-determination, to want that the Palestinians also have a state that cares for her own people, and to discern the difference between acceptable criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism. I'm praying for peace and safety on both sides of the border. I'm praying that the ceasefire holds for the Israeli children who have grown up on playgrounds with built-in bomb shelters, and the children on the streets of Gaza whose future is terribly bleak. And I'm praying for the courage and confidence at the foot of the mountain as we take faith traditions, our faith traditions, into the world, to live by them and honor life by them. Hopefully, we can ascend the ladder of history in justice, in hope, and in peace. Amen.
This is John Ederer. I am the Imam of the Muslim Community Center of Charlotte, and I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, the loving, the benevolent, the beneficent, all of the beautiful qualities and traits that we praise and glorify in the divine truth that we look to exemplify the beauty of God in our lives. So I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, by the time I had graduated high school, I could not have told you the difference between Peru and Palestine. I could not have told you the difference between Israel and Iceland. And it's unfortunate that many Americans grow up not knowing, or God forbid, not even caring about the human family as an international reality. And so, interestingly enough, as an American born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I could also have not told you about Black Wall Street, or a massacre that absolutely destroyed this Black Wall Street and killed hundreds of people in the process without any justification, an affront to humanity. And all of this happened 6 miles from where I lived as a teenager for almost 4 years. And so this is unfortunately also true about our history as Americans, that you can live right around the corner from such terrible abuses and evils that were done in our history as a people living in this land, and yet you don't know about it, or you have the completely wrong idea about it. So what's the relationship between the two? Well, they're both a result of a colonial force that believes itself to be a superior group, and they abuse and they treat dehumanizing and mistreating those who they dominate, because they believe them to be inferior. And so they're then using that power and that ability to control the narrative to hide and conceal the facts of their oppression against these people, so that these people will have no hope in the future of retribution, of establishing justice, or of getting their rights, or of being recognized for what has really happened to their people. So this is very unfortunate. And so as Muslims, we are called time and time again. At the beginning of each chapter of the Quran, God begins in the name of God, the compassionate and the merciful. And this beautiful quality that is used in the Arabic language, it gives all of the meanings of caring for others, of looking out for the welfare of others. This is the divine message that was sent to many prophets. And we know that even if we're struggling with that, we should at least have a simple mutual respect and offer the potential and rights to each other that we all feel are natural. And so first, there has to be justice if we're going to excel as humans and truly exemplify this golden rule in compassion and love towards each other. We have to establish justice. The fundamental verse that outlines Islamic law as a divine principle is in chapter 16, verse 90 of the Quran, where God says, "Indeed, God commands to justice, to altruism, and to preserving and tending to the needs of family." God forbids shameful immorality and sin and aggression against others. So this is the fundamental verse of the concept of divine law. And if that verse is established properly, then that opens the door for the prophetic legacy, which God explains or defines in chapter 21, verse number 107, where he says, "I have only sent you as an act of benevolence, of caring kindness to everyone and everything on earth." This is what we're called to. Actually, the Quran, in the end of Surah Al-Hadid, God comments on the nature of messengers and prophets and what they were sent with. "Surely I have sent the messengers with the proofs and the evidence and the book and the scripture and the scales of justice, so that people could establish justice and live good lives." That is what the prophets were sent to do. And so it's very unfortunate that the Holy Land, the land of many prophets, has been taken by a regime and an ideology that sees one ethnic group as superior and more rightful to the land as another, specifically the others who've been living there for many centuries in peace, with no terror, with no fighting, with no turmoil among the inhabitants of the Holy Land, being Christian, Jewish, and Muslim. And so now we have this group that sees that there is a superiority and an ethnic priority over others. And that has been the problem that established this state. And so they've taken from the American playbook that we slowly but surely expand in this project and establish supremacy and dominance to the extent that there will be no hope for the natives to ever exact justice or get retribution or reparations. So it is our call as people who follow the prophets, as people who stand for justice so that we can have peace and prosperity and that we can truly love each other, because we have to first respect each other on an equal level before we can truly love and embrace each other as a human family. So I pray from the bottom of my heart that God will bless us as a human family to learn about our history and to study these unfortunate ideologies that completely contrast and are affront to the prophethood, so that we may return the world back to its beautiful, sacred, caring cradle that it is that God made for us. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I ask God to bless all of you. Thank you so much for this time.
imagine death so much, it feels more like a memory. When's it gonna get me? In my sleep, 7 feet ahead of me. If I see it coming, do I run or do I let it be? Is it like a beat without a melody? See, I never thought I'd live past 20. Where I come from, some get half as many. Ask anybody why we living fast, and we laugh, reach for a flask. We have to make this moment last, that's plenty.
Scratch that, this is not a moment, it's the movement. We're all the hungriest brothers with something to prove. When foes oppose us, we taking on a stand. We roll like Moses, claiming a promised land. And if we win our independence, is that a guarantee of freedom for our descendants? Or will the blood we shed begin an endless cycle of vengeance and death with no defendants?
I know the action in the street is exciting, but Jesus has seen all the bleeding and fighting. I've been reading and writing. We need to handle our financial situation. Are we a nation of states? What the state of the nation? I'm past patiently waiting, I'm passionate, it's smashing every expectation, every action is not creation. I'm laughing in the face of college season sorrow. For the first time I'm thinking past tomorrow. I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, I'm just in the country and I'm struggling hungry and I'm not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Hey, I'm just in the country and I'm struggling hungry and I'm not throwing away my shot. Rise up when you're living on your knees, you rise up. Tell your brother that he's gotta rise up. Tell your sister that she's gotta rise up. Rise up, rise up. When you're living on your knees, you rise up. Tell your brother that he's gotta rise up. Tell your sister that she's gotta rise up. Rise up, I rise up. When you're living on your knees, I rise up. My brother shot me, I'm just in the country, I'm struggling, please gotta rise up.
Hermanito,
As we turn our attention now to matters of concern to this community, I began by reminding you that, weather permitting, we will gather in person this morning, Sunday morning at 11 o'clock on the grounds at 234 to engage in our first session of Summer Sing. Please come join us this morning. As evidenced by today's topic, our concerns always transcend the boundaries of our community. Concerned for our city and its planning for the future, we're offering a session this Thursday at 7 p.m. in which we'll learn more about Charlotte's 2040 plan. I'll host my friends, Charlotte City Council member Braxton Winston and Reverend Greg Gerald, who are both quite knowledgeable about the plan and its implications. See Currents, our website, or Facebook for the Zoom link. Our concerns always include those within our own community. Today we hold with love and in our prayers Mary Ellen Brooke and her family as they mourn the death of Mary Ellen's mother. Felicia and Tom Lee as Felicia continues navigating ongoing challenges following her injury. And Patrick and Jan McNeely as Patrick recovers from surgery. Your continued support makes possible all that we do. Thank you for generous pledges and for honoring your pledges by keeping current in your giving. Thank you for generosity expressed in additional financial contributions. we are grateful. Just a few weeks ago, on Wednesday, May 12th, Saeed Musa, a father of four from Ramla, just southeast of Tel Aviv, was in his car on the way to enjoy some fresh air at the beach. He was met in the coastal town of Bat Yam by a Jewish mob who, upon discovering that he was an Arab, attacked and savagely beat him. Musa's message from his hospital bed may surprise us. We're all human beings. We're all living together a long time, he said, as he called for peace between Jews and Arabs. 2 days earlier, Yigal Yehoshua, a 56-year-old Jewish resident of Lod, died from wounds sustained when Arab rioters hurled rocks at him during unrest in the central city. After his death, his family declared Yigal was a paragon of coexistence. He worked as an electrician and repaired homes for all, Arabs and Jews. They added, "These incidents aren't good for anyone, and I'm sure both Arabs and Jews are sorry for them," and announced that he would donate his organs. Randa Azwais, a 58-year-old Arab mother of 6, got one of Yehoshua's kidneys after a 10-year wait. "I could not believe it," she said in an interview from the Hadassah Medical Center in Jerusalem. "They saved me," she said. "People say he was a good man and that he didn't do any harm, so why was he murdered? This is forbidden. There must be peace between Jews and Arabs, real peace." This Arab woman spoke to Yehoshua's widow in a tearful video call and hopes to visit the family in person once she has recovered from the transplant. "Yigal saved me. And as much as I say thank you to the family and to everyone, it's not enough." These personal stories serve as another reminder. Knowing only that someone is a Jew or a Muslim does not inform us how they regard this conflict. Knowing only that someone is a Palestinian or an Israeli does not tell us how they would regard the other. Here in this country, there is vigorous support for Israel among Jews who wield political power and help lobby for commitment to massive military aid for the state of Israel. And there is also vigorous opposition from Jewish organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace and If Not Now, who are among the most critical voices of the Israeli government. So too, there are voices within the U.S. Muslim community radically opposed to the very existence of the State of Israel, and groups working together with Jewish organizations in a joint call for peaceful coexistence. One such organization is called the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom. They explain the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom holds a wide spectrum of views on Palestine and Israel. We recognize the complexity of the issues and the passions they invoke. But, they assert, inspired by our faith traditions, we believe any response to the conflict must be based on human rights, security, and self-determination for Palestinians and Israelis alike. Given how they are described, I think Saeed Musa, Yigal Yehoshua, and Randa Azwais would certainly concur. We live in a conflicted world. This we know and experience on a daily basis. It is one that requires courage and the capacity to see beyond what is to what can be. Go with courage, my friends, holding true to our vision of a transformed world. Go cultivating courageous connections.
تناديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم والله أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني أنا دمي فلسطيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني أنا دمي فلسطيني